Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Meinders School of Business Business Stars podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Golding. I'm joined today by Peter Harlin. He is the Senior Vice President of the Blumenthal-Harlin Financial Group of Wells Fargo, also an OCU alum from the business school as well. And now he is a member of the advisory committee, the Meinders School of Business Advisory Committee, which is a group of working professionals from a variety of different areas around the business industry that let the faculty and the leadership of the Meinders School of Business know what's happening in the world so that we can make sure that our education, our courses, and everything that we're doing to teach the young people coming through and getting their degrees to be most valuable when they get out of school, whether it's an undergrad or a graduate degree. So first of all, thanks for being on the podcast today, Peter.
Happy to. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for helping us get this series started. We're only a couple episodes in, so thanks for being part of the experiment part of the podcast and your role with the advisory council. Thank you for volunteering your time and bringing your expertise to that role. So real quick, like I said, that you are a graduate of the Meinders School of Business 2012. You got a finance and economics major, double major, and immediately went into the real world, started working, and have worked since that time in the financial services space. So let people know kind of your background, where you've worked, what you're doing now, and then we'll talk about how that experience is benefiting us now at the Meinders School of Business through the Advisory Council.
Yeah, so I have always worked in wealth management, always had an interest in markets, even prior to college. And so when I got to Oklahoma City University, knew I wanted to do finance and then added the economics major just because of interest. The professors there were awesome, and that was just really fun. So I was able to, join JP Morgan right out of college, and I'll circle back on that. Worked for them for 4 years in Denver after an internship in Chicago. Spent a little time in New York along the way, and came back to Oklahoma with them. And then 8 years ago, joined Wells Fargo, where I'm still at. So the kind of full circle of it is, and part of why I'm on the advisory board, it really dates back to when I was an undergrad and the help I had from advisory board members to connect with wealth management professionals, which helped with my internships. I ended up interviewing with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan both, which I never would have been able to do without the personal connections that people helped me with that were, out there in the world. So I see it as a big part of giving back more than just any monetary, support for the university, of just trying to be a real world professional to connect back to the school, whether it's through the advisory board, which goes more toward, the administrative side of things to some extent, but also connecting with undergrad students that are there and seeing how I can help.
You mentioned you're always interested in the markets, but how far back does that go? As a teenager, as a young person? At what point did you realize that the things you were interested in might be a career path for you?
Yeah, just oddly, I vividly remember all the way back. It was some random weeknight type seminar that my dad's financial advisor hosted where I learned about the stock market, and I was just fascinated by something where you could put money in and over time it becomes more money. And so that kind of carried forward into, late high school years where I opened up, just my own little brokerage account, put a few $100s in, and that was sort of the start of the era of discount brokers where you could get your Scottrade E-Trade type of free trading or cheap trading. I think it started out at 20, $30 a trade, which is still kind of expensive for me. And then it went down to free from there over time. But yeah, I just wanted to try it out. And so I would, buy and sell and, go bankrupt in little stocks, and learned a lot from that.
Nothing better than real world experience, right?
Exactly. And then carried that into college and got involved in the investment club where we managed a couple 100,000 of Herman Meinders gracious donations to the university to help with some scholarship funds. So that was more real life experience and just kind of carried on from there.
In fact, that investment club that we have here at the Meinders School of Business is really one of the things that's different from a lot of investment clubs at a lot of universities, right? Is it's real money that's in the market with real stakes, right? You can make money for the university or lose the money for the university, and it's not a theoretical.
I know it was tremendous, and we go and present in front of Mo Grotjohn and Herman Meinders on our investment club meetings. And they usually just silently kind of sat there and soaked it in, treated us with the utmost respect, even though we were these 18 to 20-year-old, 22-year-old kids, playing with some real dollars. So that was pretty neat.
So when you got those degrees, you got the first opportunity to go and interview at two of the biggest wealth management companies on the planet. How did your experience and what you learned in investment club and your time at the university help you through that and help you get that initial first job at a really premier organization?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, a lot of in business, for better or worse, is who you know. And I didn't know anybody, but connections at the university and the fact that it was small university with kind of a very highly connected alumni base and that sort of thing allowed me to make some of those intros. And then from there, it really is, you can always be given the initial intro, but from there, it's on you. For me, what allowed me, I think, to carry through and actually get into the industry was just the genuine interest in the subject matter. Obviously, I was ambitious and still am, and wanted to do well, but genuinely, liked the industry that I was in and had interest in markets. And so, some of the interviews and things like that came pretty naturally because I had been around it for what it ended up being, 4 to 8 years or something like that by the time I'm interviewing for some of these positions. So there was definitely a lot of very qualified candidates in those situations, but I don't know, just the authenticity that I'd actually been doing some of the things that I talked about was um, really helpful. So, and then outside of that, it just never, um, I don't know, you don't have to pretend like you aren't someone who you are, pretend like you're someone you aren't. And I never did. And I think that carried well as well. Just, here's what I know, here's who I am. And I was definitely, kind of the outlier. I remember getting asked by some other Ivy League, interviewees at one of the interviews just on a sidebar. And he said, "Why are you here?" And so I thought that was kind of funny. It didn't really offend me, but it made sense looking back because I was the only one from kind of a small Midwest school.
But it didn't hold you back. In fact, you leaned into it, right? And took the experience you had a year at OCU and used it to set yourself apart and ultimately get a great job that led to other great jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think all of that then is, I mean, to me, the number one thing at that turning point was you get a lot of the knowledge base in college, but day one on your first job, you have to start earning it again. Nothing is given to you. That's just, again, that's the start of it all right there. And so then it's just the basic principles of hard work, learning something new every day.
So you got your degrees in 2012. So flash forward to 2024, pretty soon it'll be 2025. What kind of changes you're seeing in the industry? What's happening now that maybe you were prepared for from your education a dozen years ago, and maybe you weren't prepared for, but do you think that the industry is going to go in certain ways in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of amazing, 12 years doing professionally, how much has changed. I imagine that will continue. Everybody sees AI and the advent of all the automated and computerized things. Um, One of the things that I think has happened in my industry, you think about supply demand models. I think that the demand for my industry hasn't necessarily increased, but the supply of advisors has decreased a lot with people aging out. A lot of people, when I got out of college, kind of the premier place to go and be, finance had phased out by 2012. I think in the early and mid thousands, finance was still pretty, peak type of place to go. And then by the time I was graduating, it was definitely technology. And so all the, cool kids, so to speak, were going and working for tech companies. Um, and so there was kind of a real big supply gap of new entrants to finance, I think, compared to the decade prior. So some of that has sustained the industry, but the main thing is information's everywhere, access is everywhere, and that used to be what the industry sold. That used to be what advisors were. You'd call to get a quote, call to get a trade, etc. It's totally an advice industry now. And you have to be able to be extremely confident at what you do, speak to a lot of things, but it's not about giving information per se. It's about synthesizing it and explaining things to people concisely and making sense of all the noise that's out there, because we have so much information at our fingertips, and that's only increasing. So it's also a very personal business, understanding people and applying what your skill set allows you to know they need to do to their situation is key.
And seeing those changes within the industry as you work within the industry, then you also, I guess, recognize that that information needs to get back to us at the Meinders School of Business so that we can adjust how these young people now that are maybe in high school today that are going to come here this semester, next semester, need to be educated, need to be trained, need to have an understanding of what this industry will look like 2, 5, 10, 12 years from now, and not how it looked in 1985 or 1955, right?
That's a very good point. It's a very good point. Yeah, and I think that's definitely skating to the puck, as Gretzky said. But um, it's a little hard to predict. I've seen a lot of the change, so to speak, over the last decade, and it's easy to look back and recognize it for what it is. It's kind of hard to say what the next decade holds.
But for us having someone like yourself who is been through that last 12 years of transition in it now, you're doing this on a daily basis, having you on our advisory council, having regular meetings and regular ways that we get to communicate and learn from you is definitely beneficial to the leadership and the faculty and ultimately the students here at Meinders School of Business at OCU.
Happy to help in any way. So I do enjoy it. So just definitely approach it with humility, because I don't understand, it's something you have to kind of, do everything you can to estimate, but yeah, happy to help in any way. It's been really enjoyable.
On a personal note, how do you get personal satisfaction out of giving back to the university and engaging potential young people?
Yeah, I truly, have been helped by so many people along the way. Continue to be, right. Anybody who is willing to put trust in me is helping me, and I'm always grateful for that. And a lot of people did that. I still have good friends from my time at OCU, and I still have friends I remember, a couple people in particular who were kind of adjunct professors out in the real world, and they taught for a period of time. They no longer do there, and I'm still friends with them. So it's a really small ecosystem in the scheme of things compared to a big state school or something. And so I like being a part of that. I think there's a lot of very high achievers that come out of it. I want to do anything I can do to help deserving individuals get the next step ahead. Sometimes it's just a connection. It may not be something I do necessarily, but maybe someone I know that I can connect them with. So I'm always happy to do that sort of thing. I think anybody on the other side of it, any student, being hardworking, kind of having all those basic principles, the sky's the limit, and they do need some connections to be able to be put into proper position for great success. And always, that's really, I'm passionate about doing that. Again, I can give money back or things like that, but I think there's way more impact when I can help specific individuals achieve specific goals and launch into a multi-decade career. I mean, that's way more impactful than a few $1,000s or whatever being given back to the university, which is needed too, obviously. But the bigger one is impacting lives and whole careers and their families. I mean, just the downstream effects of that are enormous.
Now, when you were at the Meinders School of Business, you double majored. And what was your thought process of doing it, and how have you seen having both of those majors in your background and in your own brain really help you in your career as you move forward?
Well, if anything, I think it's a good example of I, came in thinking I wanted to do finance and really didn't know exactly what that meant. It's obviously more the math side of things, although econ is very much filled with math, but has a bit more theory or art to it, if you will. It can often be like a social science or a non-business school degree some places too. But I ended up enjoying it more, as much as I like finance. I enjoyed the economic side because it had, um, you know, larger application to the broader themes going on in the world and the economy. And so that's what really brought it to life. It was a lot of fun. So I guess that it is just a good example of, sometimes coming into something with a thought about what you want to do, and then you find out, okay, there's actually something else that's really interesting. And I think pertaining to my job definitely was a well-rounded, very helpful thing to have. understanding some of the macro things going on out there. But as always, I think college gives you all the buckets for where to find things often, but a lot of the real learning and continued learning, the next step of learning is on day one on your first job, and just figuring out and understanding what's going on there. So you're equipped with the tools, but then you have to start applying it, and it can be very different.
So what advice would you give to a young person? Maybe they're a junior, senior in high school, and they're maybe in the same situation you were, where they're interested in finance or interested in the stock market and how those things work. What advice would you give them as they go forward about selecting a university, selecting a major, and how to take that first step in what will ultimately be their career path?
Yeah, it's a tough question to apply to a bunch of different interests. I would say specific to my interests, I could give some things, but I would just say in general, um, making sure that there's a spark of interest in whatever you do. There has to be some underlying just eagerness. If you wake up on a Monday or Tuesday morning and that's what you're going to do for the day, you need to be somewhat excited about it, or your whole career is going to be pretty boring. And I really think that where you get energy um, is going to allow you to be successful. So whatever that is, and there's no limits. It doesn't have to be one specific thing. So make sure that whatever it is you choose is in a field of interest. And along the way, I think, treat every interaction as an interview. There's definitely many, many people who want to help you. But sometimes you have to impress them a little bit and just show that you're serious, show that you're worth betting on. And then once somebody realizes that, then they'll bet on you and really help you. And that's where you can really, meet some amazing people and kind of go along down the road, maybe a little quicker than the average.
You've mentioned a few times meeting people that you met that you still know and have relationships with. How important is that aspect of the university experience of meeting people and building relationships and learning and understanding from everyone that's around you, not just your professors?
Well, I think it's extremely important, and I think that it is a area that CU can give you an edge. And I think if you don't take advantage of the edge, then it's probably kind of a loss for you if you don't, because that opportunity, the people that you would run into, I mean, just different business leaders would get brought to a class of 15 or 20 at OCU, and after that class, you can go talk to that person, and that person might run a public company in the city here. I mean, that type of connection just is invaluable. I mean, so you just have to recognize it for that, and not just grab your backpack and go home. So those sorts of things are pretty special, and you don't get those at bigger places. And then yeah, just knowing that kind of every connection. I mean, this is a very small city. If you stay in Oklahoma City, it's a very small city, and in the reality of things. And somebody you meet now, you're going to run into them again in 5 years or 10 years. And if you make a good connection there, then when you run into the second time, then maybe you do business together or whatever. I mean, that's just kind of how it can go around here. So I think it matters in any city, but I think even more so in Oklahoma. I think it's a very relational place, and this is a pretty small city in the scheme of things.
Peter, I want to thank you for volunteering your time to be on the Minders Advisory Committee and for volunteering your time to be on this podcast with me as well today. As we wrap up, is there any other piece of advice or anything that you would like for someone listening to the podcast, whether they're a potential student, or someone who works in the industry, to kind of know about your time and experience with the Meinders School of Business?
I think it's a very impactful place. I think that the absolute edge of it is the people that you can meet and the relationships you can build. So focus on that. If that's not your encore, something that you're interested in, then it may not be the most special place for you. But if it is, then it's the best. So I think it focuses on people and the relationships that are offered there, and yeah, all the success will follow.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it. We've been talking with Peter Harlin, Senior Vice President of the Blumenthal-Harlin Financial Group of Wells Fargo, and OCU Meinders School of Business alumni, and a member of our advisory council who brings his professional experience back to the university. Thank you again so much, Peter, for having a conversation with me today.
Hey, I appreciate it, Kyle. Thanks for having me.